Well, my friends, I could not be more excited to welcome this next guest, Batya Ungar-Sargon, the host of the new show Batya on News Nation. I love a one-word title. It's like Madonna or Cher. We have Batya. Batya, how are you doing?
I am so thrilled to be here with you. I'm such a huge, huge fan. You were on the first episode of my show, and I am so grateful to you. It was such a great way to launch. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We have to start off. I know you are a busy, busy woman. We have to start off by talking about these No Kings protest. Okay. I got some folks riled up over the weekend. I said that the No Kings protests were kind of pathetic and bleak. And I didn't mean that they didn't have some crowds, right? They got some crowds in big cities, which you would expect protesting Trump. I lived in New York in the East Village. We could get like a million people protesting fur or meat. It wasn't that crazy. But I said it was pathetic because I'm still trying to figure out what the No Kings protests accomplished. And all these people in my comments, they're attacking me, saying horrible things. And I'm like, that's fine with the ad hominem attacks. Explain to me, Batya, what you think these No Kings protests actually accomplished, if anything.
It's such a great question. People had a very similar line of questioning of the Women's March, if you remember, in 2017, right after President Trump took office, where it was just this outpouring of outrage from, then it was actually much more diverse. There were a lot more young people in the streets. This really seemed to be like white boomers in these No Kings protests. They're saying there were 7 million. I'm not sure that's accurate, but I thought President Trump's response was really apt. He was like, these people are not representative even of the mainstream of the Democratic Party. What it is representative of is that sort of far left fringe that is just outraged. They're just outraged that Trump is the president. And I couldn't help but feel like the thing they're really outraged at is not even Trump. It's really their fellow Americans who showed up in greater numbers, voted for Trump, swung every single swing state to him, popular vote, electoral college, and are now getting exactly what they voted for. So everything that they're mad at him for doing was a campaign promise. He's just going one by one and fulfilling those campaign promises. His base is thrilled. Over 90% are thrilled that they voted for him. They're very happy with what he's doing. And that, I think, is what is so outrageous to the left, is they're so used to having power, both cultural and political, and they've lost really both of those. And I think that's really what this was. It was just like a venting of like white progressive boomer outrage.
No, absolutely. It almost felt like an early Halloween to me. And maybe we can put some of the clips up on the screen. It felt like an early Halloween, Botcha, because they're out there in like furry costumes and ridiculous outfits, and they're chanting and they're singing and doing, organized choreography. I'm like, this looks very, very unserious. They've spent all of these years saying Trump is Hitler, he's a fascist, he's a threat to democracy. And then they're out there doing like spirit fingers in the street. So it's hard for me to take seriously. Don't you think there's a part of them? It's not that they want no kings, it's that they wanted a different king. They wanted, Kamala Harris. They wanted their king to win, and they can't accept that elections have consequences.
It's so interesting because they really can't fathom that. You look at what happened on the Democratic side. 14 million primary voters voted for Joe Biden. They threw those out to coronate Kamala Harris, who failed to win a single state when she was running in 2019. She withdrew before a single vote was cast. I mean, talk about kings, right? That sense of entitlement that this was hers, similar to what they did to Bernie Sanders in 2016 with Hillary Clinton. No, it's hers, right? It's her time, it's her moment, that entitlement. Whereas President Trump really won off of what he promised to do. I never experienced in my life a president actually going one by one and just fulfilling those campaign promises, irrespective of what the media says, irrespective of what Wall Street says. I promise tariffs, I'm doing tariffs. Like, I'm not here to service Wall Street. I'm here to service the American people. And so I think you're so right that the populist energy that is motivating the right now is this feeling of actually democracy is working. Do you know that in the primary on the Republican side, Nikki Haley outspent Trump 2-1. And in the general election, Kamala Harris outspent Trump 3-1. He spent 350 million. She spent 1.2 billion dollars in 100 days. So all of this whining about bot elections, it's literally the opposite. It turned, I used to think as a lefty, Citizens United was like the worst thing to have. You cannot have a democracy with Citizens United. Turns out that's actually not true. When you have somebody who ignores the elites, ignores Project 2025 when they tell him to, overturn gay marriage, ignores Project 2025 when they tell him, national abortion ban. No, the American people don't want that. They're very pro-gay. They like, to have a certain amount of abortion rights enshrined. So he marginalized the intellectual elites on the far right. He marginalized the money. He marginalized Wall Street, which for 3 election cycles in a row chose the Democrats over Donald Trump. This is what democracy looks like. And it's so funny to see these Democrats take to the streets, allegedly in defense of democracy, but actually what they're protesting is democracy in its most glorious American form.
No, absolutely. That's what's so confusing about the Democratic Party right now, especially these Democratic elites, is that they say they want no kings and they want no oligarchs, but then you look and they're giving medals of freedom to George Soros and their billionaire donors. Kamala Harris, she spent more time with celebrities doing celebrity events with like Beyonce and Lizzo than she did speaking to working class Americans in Michigan. And Trump was like, I'm going to Michigan, I'm speaking to working class Americans. I'm going to Pennsylvania. I'm going to tap into these forgotten men and women of the country. But the Democrats have become the party of the elites. And I know you've written books about this. Please tell us what you think about this as it pertains to No Kings.
No, completely. It's so funny because like nobody told Alex Soros that he's not supposed to post his trophy photos with his trophy politicians to social media while they're out there on their no oligarchy tour. Bernie Sanders only travels to these things in private jets with private security. Now AOC travels with him on his private jets. Like, it's hilarious, but it's not just the hypocrisy, it's the whole party. So 9 of the 10 richest counties in America now represented by Democrats. The vast majority of Americans making over $500,000 a year now are Democrats. And meanwhile, Trump won the majority of Americans making under $100,000 a year. 95% of political donations coming out of the top 3 management consultant firms went to Democrats, 75% of Silicon Valley Democrats, 75% of donations coming from hedge fund managers, Democrats, right? We've seen a total political realignment to where the GOP is the party of the working class and the Democrats are the party of the rich. Now, the problem is neither side has acknowledged that. The GOP has a lot of work to do as well, because they're also operating a little bit on the muscle memory of like, we're the party of the rich, we're supposed to do nice things for rich people. And it's like, no, you're the party of the working class. You're supposed to protect capitalism that raises all ships in the way that Donald Trump is really doing and has really made a hallmark of this second administration.
Well, absolutely. That's what's so interesting to me is that they paint him as this billionaire hotshot guy from New York City who had a reality show and penthouse apartments and everything's gilded and covered in gold. He speaks to working class Americans 1,000 times better than anybody on the left right now. But speaking of someone the Democrats are scared to condemn, but also scared to endorse, is Zohran Mamdani in New York City. All of these elite Democrats, they go and they do interviews and they're like, well, you endorse Zohran Mamdani. Oh, I don't want to get involved. So I want to get your thoughts on Zohran Mamdani. There's also New York Post cover we'll put up on the screen where apparently he's hanging out with these gay-hating Brooklyn imams who are linked to the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. I mean, this doesn't sound great that he's hanging out with these people, but when you look at all these pictures, even from his campaign months ago, he's constantly at mosques, he's hanging out with people who don't love my kind, aren't too friendly to me. Tell me though, okay, because I'm actually really struggling. And I said last night, I want to ask Batya about this. I left New York City. I moved out of New York City. I live in a red state now. I and a lot of my followers are having a hard time caring about Zohran Mamdani, but in conservative media, they've made Zohran Mamdani this boogeyman figure and really built him up into this huge star by attacking him every single day. But 98% of the country, we don't live in New York City. He will not affect us. We don't understand why people continue to live in New York City in these liberal hellholes. So explain to me and my audience why Zohran Mamdani is a cautionary tale for the rest of the country in maybe 2028. Like, why should we care that this is happening in New York City?
That is hilarious. You probably shouldn't. You're totally right. He's not gonna have a big impact on your life. Um, it's such a great point. I do think the media overcovers him because the media is in New York and in DC. And so they're like hyper focused on their own life and their own little world. And of course, Fox News, which tapes out of New York City, right, and has to now, deal with this. you're right. It's going to have very little impact, I think, on your life. And it's honestly, it's to President Trump's credit that he's upset about it and he's trying to avert this disaster for New Yorkers. Because you're right, it would be better for him if Mamdani wins and then turns New York into a hellhole. And then the Republicans can really say, like, look, this is coming for you, next, next up in your town, in your hometown, in the middle of the country when it really isn't. I find him to be such an interesting character. He seems to me kind of like a millennial adult daycare counselor, kind of like the Pied Piper of Bushwick. He's the hero for these sort of permanently infantilized millennials who were never able to become adults because of the housing market and the jobs market. And so they got these fancy degrees and they're in debt, and they're basically, their jobs have not lived up to the promise that they had, when they were younger. They were told, like, you are the elites, you are the future of this country, and they can't buy homes. And so they're sort of in this permanent state of being children. And he shows up and he does activities for them. He does. There was what was it called? They had this where they ran around picking up clues.
Oh, right.
And
what's it called? My producer, what's it called? We run around a scavenger hunt.
A scavenger hunt. And I was like watching to see who's going to show up for the scavenger hunt. It was like grown-ups, but obviously not grown-ups, right? Like people who find it difficult to adult. He is their hero. He lives in this rent stabilized apartment despite the fact that he makes good money now, and they forgive him for that because their parents are probably also paying their rent, he's exactly like them. And I think that that's really the key here is like, he's not really a politician. He's sort of an avatar for a state of mind that a lot of people who would have been elites had they had that trajectory like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, who are now not able to do so, they see in him this kind of like, oh, he legitimizes it, if you will, while also providing them with like all of the activities and the daycare aspect of it, the camp counselor of it all.
Well, what's interesting, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think he has sort of tapped into this sort of despondency of young people in general. Like they see that 38 is the average age now for a first-time home buyer. It was 28 in 1992, right? So things aren't great for so many young people. They feel like the system's rigged against us. Owning a home is a distant fantasy. The American dream is unattainable. But then I play the other side of that, right? As someone who lived in New York City, you're not entitled to live in this fabulous, amazing city with the arts and culture, and it's a commercial hub. You're not entitled to live there for cheap. You know what I'm saying? Who told you that you just got to live in the most expensive, fancy city on planet Earth for cheap, and that everything should be free and government issued bread and housing and free transportation? You know what I'm saying? It's like, why do these young people, and maybe they're just so entitled, they think we should just get everything for free if we want to live in New York City and live this fabulous life. Do you see that too as well, Batya?
Yeah, and it's so funny because, when it used to be this sort of hub for artists and musicians and all of this, like in the 70s and 80s, it was a shithole. Like it was dangerous, it was dirty. Like these artists were broke and they were living in these like rundown tenements. Now you have people who sort of want this much more upper class lifestyle, but the market is not able to sustain that. And that's where the downward mobility comes from. You're totally right. Like most of these people that we're describing could move to a red state and buy a house, and take a job in PR and raise a family, but they don't want that. They want the promise that they were, that they feel that they were promised as young people.
Well, it's interesting. My friends who are most upset about Mamdani, they have, condos and homes in Florida and Texas and across the country. I'm like, so get out. Stop complaining. No one's forcing you. Like, are you canvassing? Are you trying to get other candidates elected? Are you doing anything? The last thing I want to discuss with you, and this wasn't in our rundown of topics, but I know you've done so much research and writing on working class Americans. You're really just one of the most intelligent people. So I wanted to ask you about this. A topic I cover a lot in my content and on the show is the despondency of young men. And we've seen data recently that going to a four-year university is no longer a net positive for young men. And then you see these clips of the indoctrination that's happening in the classrooms. I went to one of these universities. I can speak from experience of what's happening. You see Harvard is hiring drag queens to teach queer ethnography. This drag queen, Lahore Vagistan, we'll put a picture of her up. If you are speaking to parents out there, do you recommend even sending your kids to a 4-year university or going to a trade school and learning a skill that can actually pay your bills?
It is such a hard question. By the way, one of the reasons I'm so grateful for your voice is just the way in which you are not afraid to point out how I think in many ways the trans agenda has been used to turn like normal gays into the privileged, which is like such a crazy thing to have happened in such a short amount of time. Um, the reason it's a really important question is because on the one hand, the economy that the Democrats created, in which in order to achieve the American dream, you still have to have a college degree, that is being reversed by President Trump. So he sees AI, for example, as a way of boosting working class wages and working class jobs. He's the tariffs, the immigration control, all of this is meant to help working class people who go to trade schools achieve the American dream. We have a huge shortage of skilled trades folks in this country. Huge. On the other hand, what if the Democrats win in 2028? You think they're going to keep this going? No, because having a 4-year degree is the number one predictor for being a Democrat, which is why they got rid of vocational training in schools in the first place. So it's such a hard thing to tell somebody like, what should their child do? Like, how do you like advise them? Because we all want the same thing for our kids. American dream, right? Raise a family, retire in dignity. It's very hard to say. And I would say definitely that is one of the major differences between the two parties right now is the Republicans are very focused on achieving the American dream for people who work with their hands for a living. And the Democrats have used the indoctrination of a college degree to mask the way in which they abandoned labor and to paint themselves as the good guys, and they're definitely going to keep doing that if they win power again. So it's just such a tough question, but it is the most important question right now. It's the keep asking it.
Totally. Yeah, no, a majority of my audience is women. It's 85% women. A ton of them are moms and grandmas. And so I just get these messages all day saying, I would never let my kid now go to, Harvard or Columbia or any of these Ivy League schools. I feel like it's almost a negative. Like if you're hiring and you're an employer and someone comes in, they could have, magna cum laude. I went to Harvard. I went here. I almost want the person who's just like hustled and made it work and made it happen for themselves, who has that agency. And I also think you come out of college with all of this debt. There's no guarantee now that it's going to be a net positive for you in terms of employment or salary. And then you're just so far behind. So I just really wanted to hear your voice on that. And you also mentioned one thing before I let you go about the trans agenda. I have no problem calling out this LGBTQIA R2D2 crap that we've had. And it is interesting that folks like me, I was with some gay friends recently and we're like, we've become like the normies, the boring ones. They paint us now as like, we're just real boring, we're with the system and we're, part of the system
Totally.
now. It's like, really 10 years ago, we couldn't even get married, June 2015, I guess. But no, it is interesting to see this trans agenda, and you still live in New York City. So you see it way, way, way more than I do, Batya.
Yes, indeed. I will say, I know I'm supposed to care the most on the Zohran Mamdani front about the ways in which he's bad for my people, but seeing him cuddling up to people who are so homophobic, it's so disgusting. And I think that there's one of the things I learned when I was reporting my book, Second Class. I traveled the country and interviewed hundreds of working class people. And I learned like from them, like there's no LGBTQ in the working class. There's like very, very pro-gay Christians and conservatives and Republicans who sound indistinguishable from Democrats when they talk about their gay friends and, their neighbors and their family members who they want to see settle down and get married and fall in love, even if it's with somebody of the same sex, because that's what they want for their people in their lives. That's everybody in this country now. And then even the Democrats I interviewed who were working class were really worried about the trans agenda in schools, in bathrooms, in sports. So there was no LGBTQ. There was like everybody was pro-gay and everybody was really worried about and stuff. And like that is something that I think elites really don't understand, because the elites on the far right still haven't gotten the memo about like, sorry, the gay marriage question is over. We won. Move on. And then the elites on the left are like obsessed with the transing of it all. And I think that they miss where most of the country is.
Well, what's interesting is I think what upsets some people on the left, even in my comments, is that I respect people's religious freedoms and religious liberties. There are some folks who even watch me and maybe they're not down with gay marriage. And I think some folks on the left are mad that I don't take it personally. I don't care if you're watching me and you don't think I have the right to get married. I do. You know what I'm saying? But I respect that you have your religious difference. That was sort of, what I loved about Charlie Kirk, because he's like, look,
Yeah,
I have my own beliefs, but I'm still going to be friends with you and like you and hang out with you. It's like, I'm an adult.
totally.
Okay. I'm not a little baby victim constantly. And I think a lot of the LGBT folks on the left want to play the victim card, but something I've talked about a lot in my content as well. And I'm so glad you said this. There is no LGBT community anymore. Everybody's like, you're turning on your community. No, we're all different little communities now. We're 10 years post Obergefell, the Supreme Court decision. We have equal rights. I don't know why we're all part of one umbrella. We're not all one community. And that's what drove me so much to the Republican Party, is they really judge based off of merit. They don't care if you're gay, straight, black, white. They're like, tell us what you can do, right? Scott Bessent, people say all the time, he's the top gay cabinet member in history. I'm like, yes, but he wasn't chosen because he was gay. He was chosen because he was excellent. Okay, final words, and I'll stop filibustering.
Well, just no. I mean, the power gays have taken over the Trump administration. Like
Right.
it's the funniest thing to ever happen. But it's like, there was a really funny comment from one of these like young female right-wing journalists, and she was like, I thought when I moved to DC I'd be able to like meet a whole bunch of guys in the right-wing scene, and she's like, they're all gay. And it's like,
Right.
yeah, it is the most welcoming place right now. And yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, I didn't even realize Scott Bessent was gay until he introduced his husband and his kids at his confirmation hearing. And
Right.
that's kind of that was Dr. King's
That's what we want.
vision, was like, yeah, based on merit. And it's so amazing to see that being achieved by the right in so many ways, that I think it's really, actually, as an American, it's very moving.
It's interesting you bring up the administration. One of my friends in the admin, Martin Marks, he loves you. And I said, Batya's coming on tomorrow.
I
And he
love
was so
him.
excited. And so I'm so grateful you came on, and I will be tuning
Thank
in.
you
I
so
always
much.
record your show and then I go through and I see, because you have really good guests. I think you just interviewed Howard Lutnick. You've got great guests. Your show
Yeah.
is hot, and I'm inviting myself back on. But have an amazing rest of your week, Batya. We all
Thank
love
you
you.
so
Everybody
much.
go follow and subscribe, and we'll be
Thank
posting a bunch.
you.
So have an amazing day. Thank you for being here.
God bless. I know I'm going to get canceled for this, but it was totally worth it.
All right. We love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Let's talk about Peak, a luxury brand transforming wellness with the absolute best, rare and precious plants, cutting-edge ingredients, and formulations rooted in traditional wisdom. Their science-backed botanicals, minerals, and supplements support sustained energy, metabolic function, immune health, and radiant skin. Peak is proud to introduce Sun Goddess Matcha, an organic ceremonial superfood blend that redefines your daily routine. Crafted from the purest tea leaves, it provides a smooth, sustained energy for a calm mind and a radiant glow. The nutrients in their matcha can help curb sugar and hunger cravings, making it easier to stick to your wellness goals, and their matcha is 100% organic. Peak picks me up when I'm feeling under the weather, especially with the seasons changing. Unlock your healthiest glow and feel the difference. Get up to 20% off for life, a complimentary gift, and explore Peak's clean, pure ingredient wellness rituals at peaklife.com/link. That's PIQUE life.com/link.